Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Tales of Herding God Part 145 based on novel. So let's start. His feet moved as he calculated the angle and success rate of his attack. With the execution of secrets of dragon control, the flood dragons coiled around his body and lent him their magic power. Chinmu's aura rose dramatically, and as the flood dragons lent their power to him, his body grew taller and taller. His magic power grew more and more powerful while dragon scales were also frantically growing out of his outer body, covering his skin. Clink. 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 More 9 heavens formation markings appeared in his pupils. He had executed 9 heavens eyes awakening technique to its extreme. Not only was he using superior algebra attainments to calculate, he was also using his divine eyes to observe the battle and calculate. Shingan has a flaw. His body parts aren't adapting well and are starting to reject one another. His eyes suddenly lit up, and his mental strength burst forth to contact Yu Zhaoqing with his mind. She then immediately used her brainwaves to inform blind Li Qianxing and Emperor Yang Feng. At the halfway point of the mountain, Qin Mu stopped and bent his knees to squat down. The flood dragons on his body raged with magic power, causing his aura to suddenly become berserk as well. Qin Mu's palm, that was holding carefree sword's hilt, moved, and sword light filled the heaven. The strength in his legs burst forth, and he nearly replicated Cripple's speed when he was at his peak. Boom! Wherever Qin Mu passed by, there would be hundreds and thousands of afterimages overlapping each other, moving forward continuously toward the painting. He reached it the moment when the sword light of Carefree Sword was the most scorching. His speed reached its extreme, and the sword light of Carefree Sword was like a huge drill flashing by, piercing through the painting. Shingan's chest was struck by the sword, and he got stabbed out through the painting, which was then shredded to pieces. At the same time, Blind's attack arrived. Black Dragon Spear Long Tuo pierced Shingan's back and came out from his chest, avoiding his heart. Emperor Yang Feng and Li Qianxing used 9 Dragon Mountain Breaking Palm, and Great Overarching Heavenly Stars Palm Force to strike at the same time against Shingan's left and right temples, causing massive destructive force to rush into his brain. At the same instant, the lights flowing through Yu Zhaoqing's body flew out to stab Shingan's legs, fixing his feet to the ground. Has it ended? Everyone let out a sigh of relief. Yu Zhaoqing played the most important part in this battle. With her as the central administration, Li Qianxing, Emperor Yang Feng, and Blind could work together as one. Only then were they able to suddenly unleash their most ruthless moves, killing Shingan in one strike. He, you guys aren't bad. Shingan, who got hit by the sword and spear, suddenly raised his face full of praise. Blood was flowing out from the corner of his mouth and various wounds, but it was only for a moment. As if it was alive, it is suddenly rushed back in, returning to his body. You guys are all not bad. Shingan laughed loudly, and Qin Mu's face changed drastically. He hurriedly pulled out his sword, but at that moment, Shingan stretched out his hand to flick him away. Qin Mu's body trembled violently, and the flood dragons cried out mournfully as they fell off him. His strength instantly declined. Blind shook his spear and flicked Shingan up into the air, saving Qin Mu. Shingan stretched his hand out to smack Divine Spear Long Tuo heavily, and sparks instantly flew around Blind's hands. The flesh and blood of his palms were all messed by the friction with Divine Spear Long Tuo, which came smashing back at him. Once Divine Spear Long Tuo saw that it was about to stab him in the chest, it changed back into a black bone dragon to coil around him, trembling violently to shake off Shingan's power. Divine Spear Long Tuo's bones rumbled with dragon roars. Only then was it able to shake off the power. The black bone dragon raised its head and coiled even tighter around Blind. Shingan fell to the ground with a thump. There were 2 huge holes in his chest, which were caused by Qin Mu's sword and blind spear. His head was nearly squashed due to Li Qianxing and Emperor Yanfeng's palm divine arts. Meanwhile, there were over a dozen holes on his legs from Yu Zhaoqing's attack. You guys are really not bad. Shingan's face was long and narrow from being squashed, and his face was warped. However, he was still smiling with sincerity. You guys are worthy of me using my full strength. Kacha. The chest he always carried with him split open, and 3 heads flew out. Shingan raised his hands to pluck away his own that had been squashed, and the 3 new ones landed on his neck, each giving a shake. The eyeballs in the squashed head then flew out to replace the eyeballs in one of the heads. 4 more arms then flew out of the chest and came to his sides, growing into his body. Shingan moved them and stretched out one hand to pull out the divine heart that had been pierced, replacing it with another one. He then pulled out the ribs that had been sliced apart and shook his head. Even if I kill all of you, I can only be said to not be making a loss. All of you aren't bad, worthy to be part of my collection. Blind's expression changed as he stretched his hands to grab the air. Long Tuo flew into his hand and transformed back into a black spear. He shouted sternly, "We can't wait for him to finish changing his body." The huge spear in his hand stabbed forward. Emperor Yangfeng and Li Qianxing immediately went left and right to attack. Yu Zhaoqing also used all she could, but Shingan remained calm and composed as before, using 2 hands to continue changing his damaged body. Bang! Emperor Yangfeng suffered numerous punches and flew backward. The tip of Blind's divine spear Long Tuo was grabbed by Shingan's other hand, which gave a forceful jolt to flick Blind high up into the sky. 2 heads opened wide to howl loudly. Their voices like thunder struck Yu Zhaoqing, who was in mid-air, causing blood to leak out from the corner of her mouth. She lost control of her consciousness and fell from the sky. Li Qianxing's palm force burst forth, but what she saw next was Shingan finishing to replace his body parts, facing her with his 3 heads and 6 arms. How am I going to fight like this? Her mind was blank. Cult Master Li, you've planted a devil in the Dao heart. Shingan's 3 faces revealed peculiar smiles. Each face looked different, having a mixture of man and woman, young and old. It's easy to break. After you die, I shall preserve this body carefully. Li Qianxing's expression changed slightly, and great overarching heavenly star's palm force instantly changed. Her attainments in spell divine arts could be said to be number 1 in the world. The nodes of great overarching heavenly star's palm force were stars, and when they revolved, the attributes of the palm force would change and its power would also become different. Her palm force may seem like corporeal body divine art, but at the root, it was a spell divine art. It had inner space, myriad of changes, and was close to boundless. As a matter of fact, after Li Qianxing had succeeded in cultivating great overarching heavenly star's palm force, she had lost her motivation to improve. That kind of divine art was too perfect, so perfect that all the other divine arts created after that couldn't surpass it. Great educational heavenly devil scriptures had unity technique, and she called great overarching heavenly star's palm force her unity technique, that was able to control all divine arts in great educational heavenly devil scriptures. Yet no matter how many times her palm force transformed, Shingan paid no attention to it. He didn't even try to guess the transformations of her palm force, or divine arts. No matter how many times her divine arts changed, Shingan broke them apart with brute force. God's fist, God's strength, God's magic power. He was a god that disregarded all her changes, and just crushed everything in his way. Blood leaked out from the corner of Li Qianxing's mouth, and she felt a terrifying force coming out from Shingan's palm force. That power bombarded her vital qi and struck the devil seed. Village chief and Blind couldn't do anything back in the day to save Sai Yuyu. Old Rulai also didn't manage to enlighten Li Qianxing, yet Shingan went straight for the origin, wanting to destroy him. Emperor Yang Feng and Blind attacked. Yu Zhaoqing also picked herself up and rose to fight. 4 of Shingan's hands dealt with Emperor Yang Feng and Blind's attacks, while vital qi rose from the top of his head to transform into a divine bridge. His primordial spirit stood on it and fought with Yu Zhaoqing, blocking the moves of the 3 people, and even severely injuring them. Too terrifying. Emperor Yang Feng couldn't get through the 3 heads and 6 arms. Blind had the ability to break through Shingan's defense, but the other's power was just too strong. His magic power far surpassed that of Blind, which made his attacks have not lethality. The battle between Yu Zhaoqing and Shingan on the divine bridge was filled with danger. Shingan's primordial spirit was extremely weird and terrifying. It was changing non-stop, sometimes becoming green dragon god, sometimes white tiger god, and at others black tortoise, or vermilion bird. He had even seized the primordial spirits of experts, who had cultivated them to the god realm. Invulnerable, invulnerable. Blood kept flowing out from Li Qianxing's mouth, and the devil seed was gradually shaken. Yet before that happened, the corporeal body might not be able to handle it. After all, the body belonged to the disciple, Sai Yuyu. Li Qianxing had changed her primordial spirit into a heart devil, planting the devil in her Dao heart. She then had borrowed Sai Yuyu's body to continuously nourish herself and become stronger. Only recently did she try to fuse and take over the body. Because of that, Sai Yuyu's cultivation had risen drastically, breaking through life and death a year ago, and the divine bridge just recently. Yet Sai Yuyu's primordial spirit couldn't withstand Shingan's attacks. Before Li Qianxing's devil seed was killed, Sai Yuyu would probably die in Shingan's hands. Once Yuyu is dead, this body will belong to me, I can escape, Shingan can't hold me back. Li Qianxing was overjoyed. She had always fought over the flawless body with Sai Yuyu, yet there was always Blind, village chief, and also old Rulai who got in the way, and now she would finally get her wish. What she loved wasn't Sai Yuyu as a person, but her body. How good was it to be a woman with a beauty that even the gods would envy? So beautiful that one looks out of this world. With such a body, Li Qianxing would attract the eyes of everyone no matter where she walked. Countless men would fall head over heels for her and go into a frenzy for her. Everyone would love her. She could have everything. Since she was the previous heavenly devil cult master, her abilities weren't just for great battle prowess. If she wanted to escape, not many people in the world could be able to stop her. The cult followers of heavenly devil cult were skilled in all kinds of escape skills, and she was even a great master in this field. Now, she just needed to wait for Shingan to get rid of Sai Yuyu's primordial spirit, and she would be able to escape to live a happy and blessed life. Yet Li Qianxing's heart suddenly became flustered for no reason. He thought of a bright and beautiful morning 100 years ago, when the young patriarch had brought a little girl of Sai family to find him. This is Sai Yuyu, the heavenly saint cult saintess of this generation, but I can't teach her. Compared to me, you are still young and robust, so you can handle the torment. The young patriarch had thrown the little girl over and turned to leave. He escaped as though the little girl was an extremely dangerous beast. Back then, when Li Qianxing saw Sai Yuyu's face, he had still been a man. At that time, Sai Yuyu was only 13 years old, and he could still remember their first meeting. He'd felt a blow to his heart, as though he was struck by the greatest happiness. It was like his heart was held by her warm hands, like the whole world was only left with that young girl in front of him. Yet he knew he was her master, and he couldn't have any evil thoughts toward his disciple. For a long time, he always abided by a master's responsibility, teaching Sai Yuyu with all his heart, imparting all he had learned to her. Yet evil thoughts still kept climbing out from time to time, disrupting his thoughts and Dao heart. Sai Yuyu was very mischievous, and basically, all the people in Heavenly Saint cult had been tormented by her, which resulted in a lot of trouble. Li Qianxing was always busy cleaning up the mess left by his young disciple, settling all the troubles caused by her. However, that time was also when he'd been the happiest. Even though he was always busy cleaning up after her, he also got to enjoy spoiling her. In front of him, Sai Yuyu was obedient and understanding. She improved very fast and was much to his liking. There were no dumb women in Sai family. Back then, they had a very strong relationship as master and disciple, and he had gotten used to hiding the evil thoughts deep inside him. When did he start to change? Sai Yuyu had grown up. Her mischievous and puerile character gradually vanished, and what replaced it was an astonishing charm. Every action, every word radiated with charm, to the point that he could only have eyes for her. At that time, he had known that he was the master and shouldn't have evil thoughts toward his disciple, but he couldn't resist it any longer. He peeked on Sai Yuyu bathing, collected clothes she had worn. He was infatuated with her to the extreme. However, he was detected by Sai Yuyu, and she started to slowly drift away. It should have been around then that his infatuation had become twisted, changed into greed. The more he couldn't get it, the more he wanted to get it, and the more the thought, the more his heart became twisted. He felt that what he loved wasn't his disciple, but that most beautiful body. He felt his own change, and he couldn't help being frightened. The collapse, distortion, and deformation of his Tao heart terrified him. To save it, he had come up with a solution. Since there was a rule which forbade master and disciple relationships, which limited the feelings between him and his disciple, he could become Sai Yuyu and live with that beautiful body. He decided to use his power and prestige to settle all of it. All those who opposed him in the cult were exiled, or killed, or imprisoned. Finally, he had his wish and divorced his first wife to marry his disciple. That night, Sai Yuyu fought vigorously to kill him, but that was within his expectations. He became a heart devil which lay low in her Tao heart, waiting for the day he could become her. Li Qianxing recalled all of that, and his eyes grew blank. I've lost. Since that bright and beautiful morning when I saw her for the first time, my Tao heart has been defeated. Li Qianxing coughed up blood from Shingan's heavy attacks, and moved back continuously. That morning when the young patriarch had sent Sai Yuyu over, at that first look, he had already fallen in love with his disciple. What had crumbled his Tao heart wasn't Sai Yuyu, but him himself. Because of the infatuation and the forbidden relationship between master and disciple, his Tao heart was twisted continuously, until it finally became what it was today, a joke in the eyes of others. He didn't really want to attain her body, but had loved the person from the beginning to the end. It wasn't her body. It was only his twisted Tao heart, which made him think that he had wanted to become Sai Yuyu. When I first met her, I was defeated. Patriarch, you harmed me. Li Qianxing roused his spirit and remembered what else the young patriarch had said during the morning he had sent Sai Yuyu over. Great Educational Heavenly Devil Scriptures contains the two words Great Educational, and they mean education, inheritance. As the sacred cult master, don't fail to live up to those two words. At that time, there had been only the girl in his eyes, and that sentence had passed by his ears. However, it had become abnormally clear now. The two words, Great Educational, I have never followed them before. Li Qianxing hissed fiercely, and a terrifying devil light burst forth from Sai Yuyu's body, shooting out from her heart, and stabbing Shingan's heart. That black light was like a bridge for Li Qianxing's primordial spirit to rush at Shingan. My good disciple, go. He entered Shingan's Tao heart, and he actually felt at peace, like he had never felt before. Granny Sai woke up and was stumped for words. Yu Jiaoqing fell from the sky while coughing blood. Blind's divine spear Long Tuo was bent and his arm was broken, Emperor Yangfeng, was raised up high by Shingan before being thrown headfirst into the ground. Empress Dowager and the rest were currently standing up with shaky legs. Cripple tried to crawl up with his hands. Blood flowed out from the corner of Death's mouth, while he held his brush with trembling hands, unable to control it at all. Qin Mu was refining spirit pills frantically, treating the injuries of the injured flood dragons. Everyone had lost. They had suffered a crushing defeat. Shingan's palm came at Granny Sai, wanting to destroy her primordial spirit. Suddenly, that palm stopped in front of her face and became somewhat gentle as it smoothed out her beautiful hair that was messed up at her temples. One head of Shingan lowered to look at her with a gentle gaze, as though it was the morning 100 years ago. You, be a beautiful woman and live your life happily, quickly go, Li Qianxing's voice said from Shingan's head. He then shouted sternly, Shingan, follow me to death. Heavenly Devil Disintegration. Cult Master Li, you are too presumptuous. Just a mere devil seed and you want to take over my corporeal body. Fierce shouts came from the other two heads of Shingan. There was a rumble, and a violent explosion came from Shingan's body. It trembled, the limbs going out of control. Cripple forcibly pushed himself to fly out of the hall, his hands coming for Shingan's eyes. Yu Jiaoqing exploded with the last of her strength, and multicolored rays held Shingan's body in place. Blind raised his spear with one arm, and used all his strength to stab into Shingan's heart. Emperor Yangfeng snarled and soared into the air while being upside down. He lured over bolts of lightning that were as thick as dragons to strike his opponent frantically. A bunch of trash. Shingan's body suddenly broke down, and heads, arms, a chest, a heart, and legs came flying out from his chest. All of the heads were fuming with anger. You are all a bunch of trash. So what if you used Heavenly Devil Disintegration? What can you do to me? Everyone flew off in all directions and coughed up blood without stopping. Qin Mu jumped up and flew over while the flood dragons chased after him frantically to coil around his body, raising his aura drastically. He raised his sword to stab at Shingan, who was reassembling his body. Get lost. Shingan's arms fell off his body and tapped over a dozen times in a split second, severely injuring the flood dragons once more. They collapsed to the ground, unable to get up anymore. Shingan pulled back his arms and continued to reattach new ones to his body. He flicked Qin Mu away with a finger and said coldly, if it wasn't because you are still of use to me, I could blow you to death with just a breath. The arm he had just connected suddenly fell off his armpit and dropped to the ground. Shingan was stunned. He looked down at that arm, and one of his eyes suddenly dropped out from its eye socket, rolling 2 rounds on the ground. What's happening? He couldn't help being stumped. An ear slid off then, but just as he was about to catch it, his arm also suddenly fell off his body. He raised his head to look at Qin Mu in a hurry, but that head came tumbling down. He shouted over from the ground, you poisoned me. Qin Mu climbed up and wiped away the blood on the corner of his mouth, while saying ruthlessly, I just refined a supplement for you. And it worked perfectly. Supplement? Shingan was slightly stunned. His chest suddenly exploded open, as ribs came out from his flesh and blood. The latter seemed to be rejecting his ribs, and it looked extremely scary. The divine blood in his body was also flowing outwards. After that, a leg suddenly left the body without his control. What you gave me was really supplement. Not poison. Shingan's face finally became flustered when another head fell off. The eyeballs, ears, and nose all slid off. The scattered eyeballs, nose, and tongue bounced around, trying to stick themselves back on the head, but once they managed that, they would fall off again. They couldn't join one another. Emperor Yangfeng, blind, and the rest saw a ray of hope and immediately attacked. Shingan raised his hand to grab divine spear long tuor that blind stabbed toward him. Just as he took hold of it, his whole arm went flying with the spear. He blocked the fist of Emperor Yangfeng, and his backbone suddenly slid out from his body. It wasn't his as well, but had come from a divine skeleton. It cannot be a supplement, it cannot be a supplement. Shingan was flustered. Granny Sai suddenly smacked him in the chest with her palm, and what she used was Li Qianxing's great overarching heavenly star's palm force, which penetrated his chest. His heart jumped out and landed on the ground, bouncing twice. How can it be a supplement? Shingan was still not yet dead. He used all his strength to defend against the attacks of everyone, growing more and more terrified. Supplements could only make him even stronger, so why would it make his body split up? Bang, bang, bang. His body suddenly exploded, and blood spilled out in all directions. It had come from another expert, and wasn't from the same body as his heart and body, so it was rejecting all parts of the body. What poison did you give me? Shingan's head, which had landed on the ground, flew up again, and pounced over. Qin Mu wasn't in time to dodge it, but at that moment, Cripple's hand moved at lightning-fast speed, and he sprinted over. He suddenly leaped up and grabbed the head while shouting, "Return my legs." That head roared loudly, blowing Cripple away. However, he came flying back and fought with the head again. A leg sprinted on the ground, rushing toward Qin Mu. Def tossed out the brush in his hand with force, and it swept past Qin Mu, taking that leg into a painting. Def collapsed on his back and gasped for breath. He had used up all his strength to draw a painting, fierce tiger painting. Within it, a fierce tiger was holding that leg in its mouth and running away. Qin Mu let out a sigh of relief. What he gave Shingan was indeed a supplement, a true medicine. Wanting to use poison against Shingan was nearly impossible. It was hard to say if even apothecary had the ability to do it. It was clear then that it was impossible for Qin Mu to refine such a wonderful poison. Shingan had beat up blind, deaf, cripple, Li Qianxing, and Emperor Yangfeng, all these unmatched existences, to the point they had no means of retaliation. Empress Dowager, and the rest of the experts, hadn't even lasted a round before falling. Shingan was definitely numerous times stronger than dragon-rearing sovereign. Qin Mu had used his 3-break powder to poison dragon-rearing sovereign, yet that had only troubled him, without posing any threat to his life. So poisoning Shingan wasn't the best thing to do. Besides that, Shingan was also skilled in medicine. His attainments in the art of healing could be matched by few in this world, so it would be easy for him to see through it if Qin Mu used poison. To a divine physician that pursues a certain goal, poisoning an opponent was a kind of art. One that did not necessarily require the use of poison. Shingan was unbelievably strong, but his flaws were also easy to see. His body parts were all taken from other strong practitioners and weren't one with his original body, thus they would easily reject one another. Apothecary had once taught Qin Mu that the human body had a self-defense system, immune system. When transplanting organs, it was easy for the original body to recognize foreign ones as invaders that needed to be eradicated. This was the reason why Shingan's body parts started to reject one another. Apothecary had also taught Qin Mu that most diseases came from the deterioration of the self-defense system. For example, a flu epidemic could be eradicated by strengthening one's constitution and self-defense system. With these 2 points, Qin Mu came up with a method to deal with Shingan, and it was by refining a great supplement. It would strengthen the sense of rejection between all his body parts, raising it to its maximum. As the only youth in disabled elderly village, Qin Mu had gone through the strictest teachings ever since he was young and had been devastated by the 9 elders of disabled elderly village. The so-called strict family had made him deeply ingrain all their teachings and good traditions in his heart, which then became his personal standard of conduct. Apothecary had noble character and unquestionable integrity. He felt that being an apothecary was an art. There was no fixed boundary between supplement and poison. Poison could be used as a medicine to save lives, while supplement could also be a lethal poison. When Qin Mu had refined pills to cure the flood dragons, what he refined was that great supplement. With the dragon Chilene's saliva as a base ingredient, its potency was increased by all kinds of medicine for the flood dragons to consume. After they ate the spirit pills, their wounds recovered rapidly and their muscles regenerated. Their broken bones and snapped tendons also grew back quickly. Qin Mu used secrets of dragon control to bring the flood dragons to attack, and when Shingan's arms attacked came for them, the incomparably strong supplement took the chance to enter Shingan's arms. It then went into his heart, and from there into all other parts of his body. Qin Mu had created the strongest dose, which could even recover the body of injured flood dragons. When the supplement entered Shingan's body, the medicinal energy came into effect and amplified the rejection of his immune system countless times. Poisoning him wouldn't be a lethal attack, but supplementing him could make him break up into pieces. This was then the art of healing that apothecary had imparted to Qin Mu. Yu Zhaoqing, Empress Dowager, and the rest suppressed their injuries to come to fight once more. Since Shingan's body had been split into pieces, the heads on the ground flew up and shouted, "Trying to kill me like this? You guys are too naive." His scattered body suddenly landed fatal blows on everyone, but because there was no support of the corporeal body, his magic power was way inferior to what he possessed before. His divine treasures were also seized by others, and even his divine treasures had separated from his body, causing his magic power to be scattered. Any attack he made didn't have the power it had previously. Even so, his abilities were still extremely strong. Furthermore, the heads, legs, arms, and eyeballs floating around made everyone's hair stand on end. Suddenly, a few legs sprinted over and attached themselves to the bottom of Shingan's chest. Their legs exerted strength and raised him into the sky. His trying to escape. Cripple used his hands as feet to sprint over at a flying speed, shouting as he grabbed onto the two legs, "Return me my legs." The chest opened up, and other heads and eyes flew over to attack Cripple. Emperor Yangfeng shouted fiercely and spat out a blood arrow from his mouth. That blood arrow transformed into a blood dragon, which soared into the sky. Emperor Yangfeng jumped onto its back and went straight for the chest in the sky. Blind pushed himself up with his huge spear and leaped into the sky. Divine Spear Long Tuo shook its body to drag him along the air as it rushed toward that chest above. Granny Sai, Yu Zhaoqing, Empress Dowager, and the rest all executed their moves to rush into the sky, intercepting the chest. Bang! Emperor Yangfeng fell down and crashed heavily onto the ground, coughing out blood continuously. Cripple also fell right after, but he kept hugging the two legs tightly, not giving them up. Qin Mu sprinted over and stretched out his arms to catch, but his injuries all opened at that moment, and he stumbled. Cripple fell from his arms and crashed into the ground. Mua, you are unfilial. Cripple bounced once before landing down again. His eyes rolled back and he fainted, however, he still hugged the two legs tightly, his grip not loosening in the slightest. Qin Mu scratched his head and thought to himself, if I had used secrets of dragon control to control those flood dragons, my speed could have been slightly faster. He immediately executed secrets of dragon control, and numerous flood dragons slithered to him while suppressing their injuries. Bang, bang, bang. Experts continuously fell from the sky while Emperor Yangfeng struggled to get up. When he saw Empress Dowager falling down as well, he struggled to run over and catch her. Blood spewed out from his mouth as he was crushed again. When Qin Mu finally borrowed the power of the flood dragons, Yu Zhaoqing fell from the sky. He wanted to catch her, but saw her clothes transforming into scaled wings that flapped non-stop, stopping the momentum of her fall. Qin Mu stopped, but then Yu Zhaoqing suddenly lost her strength, and her scaled wings fell limp. She crashed into the ground, since it was already too late for Qin Mu to go and catch her. There was only Granny Sai and Blind left out of those who were still attacking the chest. Qin Mu then immediately rose into the sky. The flood dragons that were on his body were heavily injured and couldn't last long before they would have to leave his body, so he needed to end the battle fast. The battle in the sky was extremely strange. Granny Sai and Blind were covered in heavy injuries while standing on top of a chest and defending against attacks that came from all directions. What was attacking them were the body parts of Shingan. His divine eyes shot out divine lights, the top of his skulls flew up like alms bowls, his fists, legs, and even his heart, liver, spleen, lungs, kidneys, as well as skin, were all attacking them. Such a bizarre method of attacking had never been heard of before. Blind's black dragon coiled and spun frantically to defend, so Granny Sai had instead become the one with the strongest battle power. She used great overarching heavenly star's palm force to strike back the divine body parts that came for them. Qin Mu sprinted straight for the battlefield in the sky, his speed extremely fast as he passed by an eye. Swoosh! That eye disappeared, and a flood dragon left Qin Mu's body, moving away from the chest as fast as possible with the eye in its claw. The further it was, the weaker would Shingan's control become, and the harder it would be for him to collect back that body part. Qin Mu turned back, and his heaven-pilfering divine hands grabbed another eyeball that was shooting out divine light while flying in the sky. Another flood dragon then brought that second eyeball away. As Qin Mu sprinted frantically through the sky, he stole the various body parts that were surrounding the chest and had the flood dragons around him to bring them away. There were fewer and fewer flood dragons, and his speed gradually slowed down. Suddenly, strands of hair filled the sky like a black rainstorm and came for him. Mua, watch out! Granny Sai and Blind rushed over to his side to block that attack. Granny Sai's palms faced the black rainstorm and pushed it back, causing countless black hair to fly back like black needles. Blind's spear stabbed out and pierced the chest with a loud bang. Energy came bounding over from the inside, forcing divine spear long to or back, and the body parts immediately swarmed back into the chest through the hole. The chest then broke away and escaped. Blind took a step to give chase, but he suddenly grunted. His wounds erupted, and he almost fell from the sky. The speed of the chest was extremely fast, moving 1,000 miles in an instant. At that moment, a resounding voice rang out, "Every cloud has." A horizontal and a vertical knife light shone in the sky before returning back into darkness, a silver lining. This video will end here.